So, sorry for being late. I work in Winchester, and I thought it'd only be like an hour and 20-minute drive. And I live in Reston, so it's not a big deal. But once you hit 6 o'clock, the traffic pattern, I guess, is unpredictable. So, you know how your ETA just keeps going up and up, even though you're going faster and faster. So, and then I missed an exit, and that was a fatal mistake. And so here we are, half an hour, 40 minutes late. We're talking, I think, about stress. Is that right? Studying spirituality, balancing all that and everything. And so, you know, I have some thoughts about this. Some of it is just like from my own experience in doing like pre-med, medical school, and kind of going through what a lot of you are going through right now. How many people pre-med? Law, engineering, pottery? No pottery, okay. So yeah, there's some like, you know, tough, majors and kind of disciplines and whatnot out there. But even like if you're a writing, you know, major or something, or an English major, that's tough, that's really tough. And there's some really difficult examinations, and you know, I think just from my own personal experience, I have some things to say about that, but also just like, you know, from the spiritual perspective, I might have something beneficial to say as well, in like kind of learning how to balance this and how to adjust everything and find like a homeostasis, you know, and like a reset button that's kind of healthy for everyone. But let me just kind of, let me start here from just kind of like the medical perspective on stress and just like my own kind of personal experience here. Is stress bad? What do y'all think? Stress the enemy or stress a friend? It could be both, right? We all think. I mean, who here does not like stress? Everyone, right? But actually, stress is it's your friend if you let it be. Anyone here heard of a book called How Doctors Think by Jerome Groopman? No? Google it. Like, you'll like it. So is there a dry erase marker? No? Let's see here. Sometimes you can find, look at that. Right? So actually, this is how stress works. Like this. Okay? So you have like your x-axis. Okay. So like ability is like here, and like stress is here. Anybody know what this graph looks like? This is what the graph looks like. It looks like this. So who can tell me what that means? What does that mean? What? No. I don't want like the academic. Someone in like, you gotta dumb it down with me, man. Like, what does this mean like in layman's terms? Like you're explaining it to a kindergartner. That's what I need. What does that mean? So, like he mentions this because he talks about like how doctors deal a lot with stress, right? And what this means basically, where does it come from? Thank you. Stressed out, I don't see it. All right, so what this means is that, you know, initially, when you get a little bit of stress, it helps you, right? Your ability actually goes up, okay? And that's what stress is for. From a medical perspective, stress is simply a hormone. It's cortisol, and it's some other hormones as well. But what it does is it makes your perception a little bit more sharp, okay? You know how you usually have like ADD, and like you have thoughts that go this way, that way, this way, that. Stress actually takes away a lot of those thoughts, so you end up getting a lot more focused, okay? Like your neuromuscular contractions are a little bit more on time, so you're a little more coordinated, right? And so your ability to do something, whether it's to study, right, or make it through the fourth quarter in a basketball game, or run away from a bear, right, all these things, fight or flight, it goes up and up and up, right? And then at some point, once stress gets a little bit too much, what happens to your ability? it just keeps going down and down and down, right? Like you lose focus and you kind of become paralyzed, right? And so that can happen like when you're studying for finals. It can definitely happen like in a work setting, it can happen in a home setting, a friend setting, whatever, social setting. So it becomes really important to learn how to get rid of stress, but how to manage stress, okay? And now here there's some really important things to say about emotional health and spiritual health, right? Because this is an emotion. This is hormonal, okay? And so, oftentimes what happens is, this is especially relevant for Muslims, is that, like they want to figure out a way to like balance the stress and the spirituality and stuff. And so what do they go to? Yoga, right? Namaste, right? Or meditation or some breathing technique, right? And they're like, that helps me spiritually. You heard of that, right? Like, or you might even have said that, right? That helps me spiritually, right? And it helps me to deal with this stress, right? But I want you to keep something in mind. There's a difference between your emotional health, okay, and your spiritual health, right? This is really important, okay? When you're stressed out like this, right, and you're dealing with a lot of things, and you do some kind of meditation technique, or you go do Tai Chi, right, or yoga, or something like that, you're like, I feel so much better. It's not because you're in a better spiritual place. And that's the term that we tend to use in our culture, right? Like we're like, it helps me spiritually. So you gotta be very careful about that. I'll tell you why here in a second. It's not helping you spiritually. It's helping you emotionally, which is good too. Like your emotional health is something that's important, right? Your emotional kind of like reset button, like it's very important. When you breathe, when you meditate, your blood pressure goes down, right? Your heart rate goes down. Certain hormones get released that are really beneficial for you. When you do yoga and you stretch, right? Things called iconisoids get released in your body, which are like super hormones, right? And it feels really good. And there's a palpable, albeit transient, but palpable kind of like boost in your emotional well-being, right? And it's important to have that. It's important to have that those emotional tools to kind of deal with when the stress level gets a little bit too much, right? But keep something in mind. That did not help you spiritually at all, okay? It did not. It did not help your soul one bit. It might have helped your blood pressure to do that breathing technique, right? It might have helped your heart rate, okay? It might have helped your focus level, and it might have helped, your stress level a little bit. Because all of these, this is just a hormone, right? I can inject you with certain hormones, you'll feel like you don't feel any stress at all, okay? So, there's a difference between your emotional health and your spiritual health. And it's important to have that emotional health checked and have things in place for that emotional health. But don't start to see yoga as a replacement for salah. Don't start to see meditation as a replacement for dhikr, okay? Right? And don't start to see like writing in your diary or writing out something to help you with your stress as a replacement for reading the Quran, all right? These are good tools for dealing with your emotional health, but keep something in mind. Your spiritual health is something entirely different. Your spiritual health is something that is tied directly to salah. It is tied directly to connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here's the thing that confuses people. When I do a meditation, or I do Tai Chi, or I do yoga, what happens? You feel good right away, right? You can feel it right away, right? But then you're like, brother, I just prayed salah, I don't feel anything. Right? Bro, I just went to Hajj, I didn't feel it. Now, wait a minute. Now this is important to understand about spirituality. Why do you want to feel something? Like, is that some kind of transaction that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You do the prayer and then you feel good? Like, that's the transaction? Right? Or like you do the dhikr and then you feel like you're calm, cool, and collected or something like that? That's a transaction. Wait a minute now. Someone remind me about, what does Islam mean? What does the word actually mean? Submission, right? We don't pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we want our blood pressure to go down. Alright? We don't make dhikr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we want to feel calm, cool, and clear. That might be a side effect. Okay? That might be a side effect. Right? But that's not the goal. The goal is submission. Right? And your spiritual health is tied to that. Now, you may not feel that right away, okay? Like you feel the feel-good feeling after doing yoga or after running a marathon or something like that, right? Or hitting a punching bag for some time. Like you feel good right away. Like you got a release or something like that, right? You feel that right away. When you read the Quran, you may not feel that right away. You may not feel the stress relief right away, okay? Because the spiritual realm works very differently from the hormonal realm, okay? Hormones go out through your blood. Your cell has a receptor for it. It catches the hormone. It sends a signal to your brain. Boom, you feel the difference right there, right then, okay? Right? But when you read Quran, it's like rain falling on a dead earth, okay? Do you see when rain falls on like an area, a land that's like, it's got like weeds and dead vegetation and everything. Do you see something happen right away? No, it takes time, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اهتزت وربت, right? وأنبتت من كل زوج حميق. He says that the earth shakes and like it begins to tremble a little bit, right? Little things are starting to happen therein. But slowly over time, things start to grow. And that's how the spiritual realm works. It doesn't just happen right away, okay? It takes time, and you may not feel it right away, okay? But it is occurring, and it's different from some of these tools that we have in place to help us with our emotional health, right? So everyone's with me here. You're studying with finals, right? Or you're dealing with work, or you're dealing with family, and you're stressed out, right? Okay, that's okay, right? You've got Tai Chi, you've got yoga, you've got the gym, you've got all these tools in place to deal with your stress, all right? But keep something in mind. Salat, even if it's not helping you, that's still a part of your spiritual health, okay? Dhikr, even if it's not helping you, that's a part of your spiritual health, right? And reading Quran, even if you don't feel calm when you're reading Quran, the point of reading Quran is not to feel calm. The point of reading Quran is to have rain come on your heart. And that will result in the way that it will result over time. Okay? So the two are not mutually exclusive, but they are different. Everybody with me with that, right? Okay. So that's in regards to that. But, also, like, in regards to just stress in general in school and so on and so forth, right? There's a book I think everyone here should read, and it's called Mindset by Dweck, right? Mindset by Dweck. I think one of the, especially like in the Muslim community, one of the reasons that we feel a lot of stress when it comes to schooling, right, is because in our kind of like cultural settings in our households and, back home, right? Your grades mean everything, right? It's almost like your entire value is dependent on it as a human being, right? And I gave a talk one time in Iowa, and I was like, talking about how people should pursue their passion and whatnot, and don't just think you have to be a doctor. And this uncle came up to me. I've mentioned this story last time, right? This uncle came up to me. He's like, "Brother, you don't know the rule of fours." I'm like, "What's the rule of fours?" He's like, "Brother, you are a doctor, engineer, lawyer, or failure," right? And I was like, okay, so that's the rule. But you feel that like at home, right? You feel that in our community, right? There's like this tremendous pressure to be a doctor. It's like if you're not, you're a failure. Right? There's this other brother I know in the masjid, and his son wanted to go into medical school. He didn't get into medical school, all right? And every time I see him, I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm great." He's like, it's like, "Well, how's your son doing?" He's like, "He didn't make it." Like, what are you talking about? He didn't make it. How's he doing, man? Like, how's your son doing? It's like, man, he didn't. It didn't. I'm sorry, I just can't. And it's like someone died. It's like a tragedy or something, or a travesty. It's like why do we? The reason is our mindset about these things as Dweck says, our mindset is a very fixed mindset. Okay, which means, what is the fixed mindset? The fixed mindset is your value is directly related to numbers and results. Okay, so your value as a human being is directly related to the number that has to do with your weight. Your value is directly related to the number of your score on the end of the exam. Or your value as a human being is directly related to the number of that income on your W-2 form or something like that, right? The fixed mindset says, like, if you don't get first place, you suck, right? If you don't end up number one in the class, you suck, you're a failure, right? And if you're not this, and you didn't get that, and you didn't come up with this, then you just didn't make it, right? You didn't make it, you know, like that brother in the masjid, right? And so that mindset is an extremely stressful mindset, right? It's an extremely stressful mind because your value is always being determined by some product or end result, right? The growth mindset is very liberating. What is the growth mindset? And by the way, her book, Mindset, it's actually one of the best-selling psychology books in America now, and it's required reading in a lot of public schools now across America, right? The growth mindset, by the way, this is very, very similar to the Islamic perspective. The growth mindset says your value as a human being is not related to that number. Your value as a human being is not related to your income. It's not related to what you scored on that exam. It's not related to your class rank or anything like that. Your value is related to how much you grew in the process. The growth mindset is all about the process, okay? The fixed mindset is all about the number at the end, okay? But someone could cheat and get the best score, right? But did they grow, right? And someone could get a C, right? Or an 80%, like something that might seem subpar, right? But they grew so much as a human being in the process, right? They learned so much. They developed so many skills. They learned so much about themselves, right? And they come to understand their value as a human being is directly related to that. Now that's an extremely liberating mindset. It's very difficult if you're a Muslim to have that mindset because of the way your parents talk to you. They're like, you know, man, if you don't get that 100%, you know, you're a failure, right? You're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure, right? Which is the fixed mindset. It's extremely stressful to grow up in a house like that, right? But that's not how Islam works. Let me ask you something. If you have all the best deeds in the world, every single good deed, and you don't commit a single sin, does that get you into paradise? You had the right number of good deeds and the right number of not having any bad deeds. That doesn't get you into paradise. What gets you into paradise?
Mercy of Allah.
And how do you get that? How do you get the mercy of Allah? Effort, right? Constant toiling and effort. And the process. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not looking at that end number. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ وَلَا إِلَى أَلْوَانِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at your outer complexions, which is fixed, and your colors, which is fixed, right? But He looks at your hearts, which is dynamic and can grow. And He looks at your actions, which is dynamic and can continuously improve, right? So in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what matters is not the end number, not the amount of deeds that you did, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. But what matters is the quality of deeds, because that's talking to growth, right? So when you're studying, keep something in mind. You may not get 100% on that final exam, right? That's okay. How did you grow? What did you learn? Right? What did you develop? How are you different now in going through this struggle? It may not be some silly examination that you have to take that's just a part of your major that you don't care about anyway, okay? It may be something related to life. It may be work. It may be friends. It may be something else, right? The fixed mindset is extremely stressful. And it's not a part of the spiritual paradigm. Everybody understand that? The growth mindset is what? Is extremely liberating. And that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has programmed our fitrah. Right? So that's also something to keep in mind. The other thing that people often hear that is, kind of related to like, how do I balance all this like spirituality and deen and dunya when it comes to school and stuff like that, is what happens is we tend to have this idea that if I'm studying at school and I'm studying physics or I'm studying math or I'm studying medicine or whatever I'm studying, those are my secular sciences. That's my dunya world, okay, which I'm preparing for my dunya work so that I can have a dunya career, right, and all those things. And then when I'm done, I'll go in my sajjada and I'll pray and I'll make dhikr, right? And what's happened is you've separated. It's almost like you've taken deen and you've put it into this little compartment, like it's a hobby or something, which is exactly what secularists want. They want religion to be on Sunday, right? And then you go and work the rest of the week, or Saturday, or Friday, and you go and work the rest of the week, right? Or it's something you do in your little private area and you don't really bring it into the secular world. You don't really bring it into the work world and stuff like that, right? And then it becomes stressful. Why? Because it's like so hard to balance this with this. Because this is taking so much time, and this also needs time, right? And it's like then religion becomes like a chore, it becomes like a hobby, it becomes like another thing, like, like basketball practice, I gotta go and take care of, right? In reality, the physics that you're studying, the medicine that you're studying, is a part of your Islamic studies. The psychology that you're studying, that is a part of Islamic studies, if there is such a thing. Why? Because all these different types of knowledge, okay, it was all created to show you one thing. La ilaha illallah. That's it. All these different types of knowledges, all these different types of sciences, they're all there to show you one thing, and that's La ilaha illallah. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there, right? So when you're studying these things, don't think that this is somehow something secular that you need to and now you need to do this, and now you need to go back and then study Islam or something like that, or catch up with the Quran, which you do need to do, right? But these are also spiritual endeavors, as long as you see it the right way, as long as you see it with the eye of Iman, right? Okay, there's a couple other things that I want to mention, right? And so, from my personal experience, like, I was at a point, because Islamic studies was a passion of mine, and I went and told my teacher one time, I want to quit medical school, and I just want to go study Islam. Like, I want to go study Sharia and not do anything else. And my teacher at that time, he didn't speak much English, but he knew a few words, right? He was my Quran teacher. And he was like, you are stupid. Just like that. Like, blunt, very blunt. And he's the one who helped me realize this, right? Like, why do you want to quit this to study that? All of these are just ayat of Allah. What's an ayat? Someone tell me what an ayat is. Sign, right? What does a sign do? It points to something. There are ayat nususiyya, which nusus means text. And so there are ayat that deal with the Quran. Those are ayat, that are textual ayat. But then there's ayat kawniyya. There are signs that deal with the universe. So if you're studying astronomy, or you're studying medicine, or you're studying psychology, or you're studying literature, these are also signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created so that you better recognize Him. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. We will show them our signs within themselves, and whatever science exists about you and your biology, and also in the most outer depths of the cosmos, whatever sciences exist in that, right? Until they realize that this is the truth. So, don't feel stressed that you got to create some kind of balance all the time between religion and secular studies. let's change that paradigm a little bit, okay? Let's change that mindset. Whatever you're studying in school right now, as long as you see it with the eye of Iman, that is in a way teaching you about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. In one way or another, it's teaching you about His names and His attributes. There's not a single science that's out there except that it reflects one of Allah's names and attributes in some way, right? Or more than one of His names, right? Take the time to reset yourself. Take the time to take a second look at these things, or begin looking with the eye of faith, right? And let that change your motivation. Let that now force you to begin to say Bismillah before you pick up that book on psychology. Bismillah before you pick up that book on math. Bismillah before you pick up that article or something like that you have to do a presentation on, right? When's the last time you said Bismillah before you started a homework assignment? When's the last time you said that? Why? Because you feel like it's something secular? Bismillah is for prayer, but it's not for that. By the way, what does Bismillah mean? Someone tell me what that means. Is that a complete sentence? That's not a complete sentence. Hold on, this is college, right? Just so I'm sure. In the name Allah. All right. Last time I checked, you're supposed to have a noun, a verb, an object, direct object, all that. This is not a complete sentence, right? Why is it not a complete sentence? What's missing here? What's missing in this?
It's action.
What's missing is a verb. There's supposed to be a verb right here, right? I'm gonna take you back to elementary English, okay? Why does Bismillah not have a verb there? So you can put whatever verb you want. I read in the name of Allah. I study in the name of Allah, right? I work in the name of Allah. I'm going to reflect in the name of Allah. I pray in the name of Allah, right? Anything that you do, you should be able to say Bismillah. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it, right? And then when you have that mindset, when you think in that way, all of a sudden this whole balance thing, it's not as difficult. But I understand you know what I mean by that? Right? Deen is supposed to encompass your life entirely. When you begin to compartmentalize it as, okay, deen is something I go do in the corner of my room, and then dunya is everything else. No. That's not what deen is. You know, in fact, there's no word for religion in the Arabic language. You know that? There's no word for religion. The word deen is comprehensive. In fact, it means debt. It means dain. When we say Maliki Yomi Deen, we're saying king of the day of debts. Because everyone returns to Allah with an insurmountable debt. And that insurmountable debt of ni'mah, of bounty, it pierces and encompasses how you live your life in every single aspect of it. From the way you dress, from the way you hang out with your friends, from the way you study, what you study, the reason that you're studying, your intention behind study, right? How you work, where do you work, how you make your money, the family that you have. Bismillah is supposed to be a part of all of that. And when it is, how do I balance spirituality and studying, or spirituality and dunya? That's not so difficult at that point, right? We make tawaf around the Kaaba. Kaaba does not make tawaf around us. Deen revolves. Our life revolves around the Deen. The Deen does not revolve around us. Okay, it's important to remember that. That's very important when it comes to this issue of balance, right? And when it comes to this, there's a few du'as, and we'll end with these, that I think are very helpful. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from 8 things. Okay? So keep these in mind. You don't have to memorize this, right? But keep these in mind, because this is a very important dua to say, especially when you're studying, and just as a human being in general. He used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from anxiety and sadness. Ham. Ham is anxiety, right? It's interesting. Himma is like stress and motivation. But ham, see how it's very similar root. Ham is anxiety. It's like when stress is not balanced, it leads to anxiety, right? Like we're talking about balancing stress with those emotional tools. Rasulullah ﷺ is seeking refuge, and by the way, anything he seeks refuge in is something that's evil, right? So he's seeking refuge in anxiety and sadness. He says two of the most honest, truthful names of the human being is Al-Harith and Hammam. Harith is the one who constantly toils, okay? And Hammam is the one who's constantly in a state of stress, right? It's just because it's natural. As a human being, it's what we tend to do, right? It's how we tend to end up. We tend to be stressed out as human beings, right? And so he seeks refuge in that. It's important that you not let the dunya be the primary form of stress for you. Whoever makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the idea of Allah being pleased with them as the primary stress of their life, Allah will take care of anything else that could be a form of stress for you. It's important to believe that, right? And he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, man ja'ala dunya akbara hammihi ja'ala Allahu al-faqra bayna aynayhi, or kama qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Whoever makes the dunya the biggest point of their stress and the biggest thing that they're worried about, Allah will place poverty between their eyes. What does that mean? It's an idiomatic way of saying you'll never be content with anything in life, right? You'll never be content with anything in life, right? And so, yeah, these exams are important. Do the best you can, but it's not the end of the world, okay? Don't let it overcome you to the point that you're missing your prayer, to the point that you're missing out on your obligations of deen, to the point that you're missing out on other obligations of life in general, right? I know college life is super, super competitive, but you know what, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preordained every single penny that you will ever make. Every single breath that you will ever take. Qadr is very liberating, right? It doesn't mean that you just sit back and do nothing, but whatever has hit you was not meant to miss you. And whatever has missed you in life was not meant to come to you, right? Right? رُفَعَتِ الْقَلَمْ وَجَفَّتِ الصُّحُفُ. He says in the hadith, the pens have been lifted and the pages have dried. So keep that in mind, because belief in qadr removes a lot of anxiety, right? And the Quran, even though the point of reading the Quran is not, to simply make you feel better, Allah has placed in the Quran a mechanism through which your anxiety is removed. Rasulullah I'll mention the other 8 things here in a second, but Rasulullah says in a hadith where he says, Allahumma inni abduka ibn abatik ibn amatik. Oh Allah, I am your servant, son of your servant, son of your maidservant. Right? Nasiyatun biyadik, madin fiya, hukmuk adlun fiya qada'uk. Right? My forehead is in your hand. Right? And whatever you have determined will happen, and your determination is just. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi kulli ismin huwa lak. I ask you by every name that is yours, sammayta bihi nafsak, that you have called yourself by, right? أو علمته أحدا من خلقك, oh, that you have taught one of your servants. أو أنزلته في كتابك, or that you have revealed in your book. أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك, or that you have hidden in the knowledge within yourself. أن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلبي, that you make this Quran the spring of my heart, spring like that light rain that brings a dead earth back to life. Like that you make the Quran something that brings me back to life, right? And تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلبي ونور صدري, in the light of my chest, وجلال حزني, in the removal of my sadness, and then here it is, right? وذهاب همي, in the removal of my anxiety. That's what the Quran does. Rasulullah ﷺ, he made dua that the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the Quran remove his anxiety. So he would seek refuge from anxiety and sadness. وَمِنَ الْعَجَزِ وَالْكَسْلِ, and I seek refuge in you from inability and from laziness. Right? Inability is when you want to do something but you can't. Laziness is when you can do something but you don't. Right? And both are hindrances to getting a good grade. Right? So this is an important dua, right? وَمِنَ الْجُبْنِ وَالْبُخْلِ, and I seek refuge in you from being a coward, right? And from being stingy, right? A coward is someone who doesn't want to sacrifice their life and their time. And someone who's stingy is someone who doesn't want to sacrifice their wealth. And these are both things that we're supposed to be giving for the sake of Allah. وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. They strive with their selves and their wealth in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he would seek refuge from being a coward and from being miserly. وَمِنَ غَلَبَةِ الدَّيْنِ وَقَهْرِ الرِّجَالِ. And from being overtaken with debt. We're in college here, right? That can be a significant cause of stress, right? Being overwhelmed with debt, right? And you should be doing, as a Muslim, you should be doing everything you possibly can to avoid that. And from being overtaken by people, right? Not just people, but being overwhelmed and overtaken by what institutions that, or whatever examinations or whatever people have set up for me to go through in life, being overwhelmed by that, I seek refuge in that. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the things that you guys are struggling with right now. So I think our time is up in this room. And, these are just some reflections about, college life stress, balancing that with spirituality and so on and so forth. Again, I'm very sorry for being late, but maybe we can have a little discussion right now and Q&A. Yeah, bro.
Could you just repeat that dua again?
Which one? Yeah, so 8 things, right? 8 things. إِنِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ الْهَمِّ وَالْحَزَنِ. I seek refuge in you from anxiety and sadness. وَمِنَ الْعَجَزِ وَالْكَسْلِ. And I seek refuge in you from inability and laziness. Right? وَمِنَ الْجُبْنِ وَالْبُخْلِ. And from being a coward and from being stingy. وَمِنْ غَلَبَةِ الدَّيْنِ وَقَهْرِ الرِّجَالِ. And from being overwhelmed with debt or being overwhelmed by people. Right? All of these things are things that weaken you as a human being. And these are things that affect your spirituality. Maybe not your emotional state so much, right? It may feel good to be lazy, right? Emotionally speaking, sometimes you want it, but it's not good for your spirituality, right? You may not feel anything emotionally if you're in debt, but it's not good for your spirituality, right? And so this is why understanding there's a difference between spirituality or your spiritual state, your soul, right? Your ruh, your qalb as a human being, and your emotional state, which is simply a set of hormones, right? Don't get the two confused. Yeah. Time's up? Okay. All right. Well, if anyone has another comment or they want to add something or take something away, happy to have a conversation afterwards.
So again, we just wanted to thank
do that, man.
Dr. Kia.
Not necessary.
He came all the way from, like he mentioned, Winchester. So we just have a small gift for him on behalf of the MSA. And then again, on behalf of the MSA, this was our last event of the semester. So we appreciate everyone who came out. Any seniors, anybody graduating this semester? So, Warsan, round of applause for her. But again, we thank you guys all for an amazing semester. I think in total we had about 14 events. We hope you guys benefited. We had an 8-week class on Tafsir Surah Yasin. We had events, a game night for social events. We had educational events. So we always, we need your feedback. How can we, do better? So if anybody has anything that they would like to add or like to see next semester, you can see me or any of the MSA officers. Contact us on social media or via email. And so again, we just want to thank you guys. We hope you guys enjoyed the semester. Good luck on final exams, and inshallah, we hope we continue to see you next semester. So JazakAllah Khair. Thank you.